All right, welcome back to the 3 o'clock session as we head down. Just been having a quick chat with Tash about the door prize, the lucky door prize that accompanies the completion of a survey. And speakers likewise receive these little shirties. And on the back, made by a highly artistic soccer friend of mine, is the, saving the world sort of artistic work that goes along with it. So zap one of those out to the speakers for today, and to someone who fills out the survey. It sort of is a lucky door prize for one of those. So one's coming your way, Fiona, at some stage. So if I haven't got your addresses,
awesome.
Just zap me one down, and roughly your size, because it's they're a little bit tight. I sort of ended up being bigger than what I thought. And I don't think it was Christmas, sort of leftovers, but anyway.
That's COVID, I think. That's COVID for you.
Yes. Yeah. So that's all. But anyway, they're not a bad shirt, and they're something a bit interesting to get around in. Good conversation starter, I should think. Okay, so welcome back to the afternoon session. We're going to continue with the idea that we've got a bit of technology that we can use to replace diesel, but we haven't got the fuel source necessary at this stage in Australia. And you can see from Fiona's talk, that is sort of a growing possibility that does exist, and one that, I don't know how you think with councils, but if you can convince one council to do it, I generally find that they all look at each other and say, that's a good idea. Maybe we'll have to do the same thing, be it street beautification or whatever sort of fad goes round. So we need to get that into the council fad box. I think it'll be a winner. But there is other people doing similar things in a different way. And one of those is Joe Finnerson down in Victoria, in the area that I can't even pronounce, Joe. What's it? You'll have to unmute and sort of enlighten us.
Yeah, thank you, John. Shall I share screen?
Yeah. Look, just a little bit of intro,
Okay.
Introduction as we go, Joe. So you're down in Victoria. You're working in the McCain potato zone, I gather.
So basically, hi everybody, and thank you for the opportunity for speaking today. I live outside Ballarat in a place called Mollingip, which is on top of the Great Dividing Range. So really, we live amongst a bunch of farmers who generally grow potatoes for Victoria. So we produce about 23% of the potatoes grown in Victoria. And I'm just waiting for the presentation to actually go up on the screen. So basically, wait a second while that comes up.
We can see it, you're just not in presenter mode. I think you need to.
Okay, I'll click
that one.
button.
That's the one.
Cool. So I'm from Mollingip and district, which is basically just outside Melbourne, outside Ballarat. We're about 110 kilometres from Melbourne. The local area produces about 55,000 tonnes of potatoes annually. And also in that rotation, we grow fat lambs, cattle, cereal, etc., etc. We live in a very lucky, beautiful area. We have high rainfall and we have rich volcanic soils. But I think we probably have a number of common challenges that most farmers across Australia sort of have felt in the recent times. So the price for a tonne of potatoes has fundamentally stayed flat over the last 10 years. We probably all know in Victoria, the price of diesel continues to fluctuate. I think at the moment it's the same price as 2005, but it does fluctuate about 39% over a 10-year period. Our farmers that we find are typically under a lot of yield pressure in terms of trying to grow more with less. We have environmental changes in terms of drought, fluctuation in diesel prices, fertilizer prices and sort of pesticide costs. So I think they're no different from what everybody else is feeling around the country. So the adventure so far, I think somebody touched on earlier, there's a lot of moving parts in projects like this. There is a fundamental coordination role. And 2 years ago, we were lucky enough, Sustainability Victoria created a community power hub program. And they appointed Breeze, who are the Ballarat Renewable Energy and Zero Emissions Group in Ballarat, to reach out to the community, to invest in communities, to look at what's the potential opportunities of saving energy using renewables. We were probably a bit of a wonky cog in that sort of program because of farming. Didn't quite fit in, put solar arrays on your roof for houses because the amount of energy that we use is quite considerable. But what we learned through that process was we looked at solar arrays, we looked at wind, we looked at microgrids, pumped hydro, we looked at electrification of pumps and engines. And we found that a lot of the challenges were around sort of regulatory barriers in terms of how you connect to the grid, having a retail license, et cetera, and also trying to find something that was suitable for a farm system. So as everybody on the call understand, in terms of crop rotations, moving solar arrays around, is that practical when you've got high quality agricultural land? Does that suit the best use of the land? And I think as I touched on a second ago, agriculture is quite unique. It sort of falls into the sort of category in between residential and large scale solutions, which I think Fiona sort of touched on earlier. And it's too big for residential. So that makes it really hard to find the right fit. What happened then about 15 months ago in Victoria, Agricultural Victoria launched an energy investment program for about $30 million. And we helped about 24 of our local farmers apply for these grants. And one of the key things of that grant was an energy assessment. And that energy assessment looked at electricity and diesel. And the majority of them were done by Pitt and Sherry, Charles, who's the next guy, presenting. So those assessments really opened farmers' eyes in terms of how much they spent on electricity and how much they spent on diesel. And I think the thing we learned was, and which has been touched on before, is the consumption of diesel. The amount of diesel being consumed was quite astronomical. To give you perspective, the 15 farmers out of 40 use about 1.4 million litres of diesel over 4 months of the year for irrigation. So that excludes trucks, tractors, and all the other stuff. So if you sort of consider for a second, how much diesel do you actually spend? What we found when we were doing this exercise as a community, that most farmers really didn't quite understand how much they were spending. I think in one particular case, there's one farmer who spends in excess of 400,000 a year on diesel. So our aim was to try and focus on replacing diesel, which this is what this discussion is about. The secondary part was trying to fix the amount of electricity that we used. And to be honest, we all found that a bit hard with sort of regulations and hurdles to try and jump over. So what we've basically done there is put all the farmers together with the community to put in place a bulk buy of electricity from 2 preferred suppliers, and that will conclude in the next couple of weeks. And that will hopefully give us some gains in terms of electricity prices, probably around sort of 10% is sort of the goal. Once the Community Power Hub sort of navigated its new journey, we sort of realised that at the beginning of the year that there's a great opportunity as a community to actually focus on fixing diesel. So we made this company called Made Energy, which is quite catchy, but it actually also means Molongip and District Enterprises Energy. And it's really made up of a mixture of different community members. So we have farmers who are 4th generation farmers. We have people who have got a branding, marketing expertise. We have members of the team who are experts in renewable energy and sort of work together. So it's been a really interesting collection of skills to actually get this thing to happen from a coordinated point of view. We also realised, and we're very open to the conversation, that we don't know it all and we don't have all the answers. So we're always trying to be quite transparent in terms of we don't have all the answers. So we then reached out to different partners like Breeze to help us, and also Frontier Impact Group, who are a Melbourne-based company who specialise in renewable energy. And they can do all the financial modelling, and they've helped us put together the financial modelling. Frontier Impact Group, they've done biomass projects across China, Europe and Australia, and have been great to work with, and they're a key partner of ours. The other thing we sort of realised is we used to have a spud growing co-op in the area. So we're trying to think about how this organisation can fix multiple problems and how we can actually get different investors from across the community. And that's one of the key things that we're still working through. But that's just sort of a background. So in terms of the journey so far, we've looked at a lot of different replacement diesel solutions. We looked at ethanol, renewable diesel, biodiesel, a whole bunch of stuff, including electrification of pumps back to the grid. For example, to put some perspective around this, connecting one pump back to the infrastructure for a 3-phase supply was about $50,000. So it gives you some sort of feel. And I think, as Fiona touched on earlier, the scale is a really critical part in terms of trying to find the right fit. The thing that we've also tried to focus on as a organisation, as a group, is really about sort of engaging with farmers in a sort of different way, in a sort of way of listening, and also trying to fix all the other problems for farmers. So it's not just about fuel or energy. There's other opportunities that we can explore to really make us have a sustainable and thriving future as a community. Has been a sort of key driver. So basically, after a lot of research, and the word according to Mr. and Mrs. Google, we did a heck of a lot of research from around the world, reaching out to different partners and different people to work with, and putting together a quite detailed financial modelling, which is a key ingredient. So that really led us to anaerobic digestion. We've touched on the creation of methane from co-digestion, so of agricultural waste. Anaerobic digestion, I think, has been tried and tested. I think Fiona and Ben touched on earlier. I think like China's got 100,000 anaerobic digestion plants planned or underway. We also felt that anaerobic digestion is quite a tried and tested technology. We also found it was quite a good fit, or hope it's a good fit for our community. And what do we mean by that? We mean it hopefully fits from a social point of view, in terms of it does socially good. Economically, it makes financial sense. As we all know, money is the global religion. Environmentally, it's beneficial, and basically it's from also a deliverable perspective about making it overly complicated or sort of leading edge. So the model that we've come up with is a sort of centralized anaerobic digestion plant. So we're calling that a hub. So that's where everything gets converted into a biogas and digestate, and then that's transported out to farms, which we're calling a spoke. So I think Fiona also touched on, if you look at the financial modelling just from a biogas perspective, financially, it does just not stack up by a long stretch. You do have to actually look at other opportunities for generating revenue. So that's what we've tried to do, is take different waste streams. If you think about an area that grows 55,000 tonnes of potatoes, there's probably a bit of waste in there that we can actually collect in a cost-effective way that we can then use to produce energy, and that's what we're working on. Blending of different co-digestions as well also makes a massive difference in terms of the amount of methane that can get produced, and that's a really critical point that we've learned. We've also learned that you can upgrade methane and biogas to different qualities. You'll also learn if you go on this journey, that there's lots of terminology in terms of methane, biogas, renewable CNG. There's probably a 15-page acronym guide somewhere. We haven't quite found that one yet, but there's a lot of terms that you need to get your head around. So what are we focused on? We're focused on converting and replacing some fixed diesel irrigation pumps. Some of those engines range from 20 horsepower to 140 horsepower. So quite a different scheme, different scale. We're not trying to convert all of them. We're trying to do a trial area just to make sure this all works and is feasible for the community. It's also about generating some new opportunities for farmers. I think somebody touched on energy crops and looking at how that might fit into the farm ecosystem, and how that might fit into crop rotations. So can those crops do other things as well? So that's something we're looking at the moment in greater detail. Picture of the cow with a bag. Yeah, most of the methane from a cow apparently comes out through its mouth. So that picture doesn't quite work. In terms of the model, simplistically and at a sort of high level, our aim is to collect selection of potato waste, animal manures, a blend of energy crops and a base of other sort of waste agricultural biomass, put that into a sort of anaerobic tank or tanks, and then that creates a sort of biomethane or fertilizer as well, which then gets reapplied back out onto the paddock. The biomethane, RNG, we're looking at the moment conceptually how we store that, how we distribute that, and how that gets used. Do we export it to the grid, or do we do something else with it? So we're still conceptually working through those ideas at the moment in terms of what it does. But we also recognise that the cost of fertilizer is going up typically. We also recognise that to produce 1 ton of urea, you need 29 gigajoules of energy. So if you think about that in terms of usage across Australia, that is quite a significant amount. So we're also fixed on trying to help farmers understand what's happening below their feet in terms of soil health and also in terms of plant health. So working with their agronomists and other people like that to sort of try and pull this all together. So you can see the model looks quite simplistic, but there's actually a lot of complicated bits in it. So coordinating that is really what the job of Made Energy is about, and that's what the group of people we've got together are actually doing and working through that at the moment. It is an exciting opportunity. Potentially it's a game changer in terms of the way we use energy across agriculture. We've still got a long way to go. We've still got a lot of challenges and speed bumps to get past. But I think the aim of this presentation is to share what we've been through so far in terms of trying to get here, which happy to work with you and help people do that. The financial modelling, just to give you an idea, when we did the financial modelling, the price of diesel in Victoria, I think it was $1.58 retail, and I think today it's about $1.20 at a pump. Obviously, farmers get an excess back on that, so it just shows how the fluctuations can happen. The things we also learned as well from talking to different providers is the range in terms of what an anaerobic digester can actually produce. In terms of you put X ton in and you'll get Y cubic meters of gas out the back end of it. So there is quite a lot of variability. So that led us to do sort of more lab testing with a university, and that's sort of suggesting that our greenhouse gas emissions through our process can reduce by 30% at a minimum. So that's really doing something good for the environment. It's also about an opportunity for creating jobs and creating a stronger community. We're very lucky. We have a great community that does some really wonderful events. And this is really about trying to bring together different farmers in trying to do something good for the long-term future of the community. And that's what we're sort of working on at the moment. As discussed, it will create new revenues for farmers. We're looking at farm gate and waste revenues and things like that, and hopefully will reduce costs. We're trying to do it in a measured way as well in terms of managed risk. We're not trying to sort of solve world peace by next Wednesday. We're actually trying to look at it in a sort of phased approach that sort of is usable and is actually real. So that's what I'm trying to do. We understand the, persona of most people is they want to see something work before they'll buy into it. So we understand that, and we're very open to having those sort of conversations. For us, it is very, very early days. We've had a lot of positive feedback from different stakeholders in government, from our farmers, and from the broader communities, which has all been great. But we still have a long way to go in terms of what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do for next steps, hopefully we're in a good position to secure some equity funding. We've got a source between another 2 to 4 million, which sounds a lot, and it is a lot of money, don't get me wrong. But when you consider that 15 farmers, or think about your own situation, 15 farmers using 1.4 million litres of diesel, that actually becomes quite interesting if the price of a litre of diesel is $1.20 or $1.30. So in that perspective, $2 to $4 million is not massive. Oops. COVID has been a bit of a challenge for us in terms of we can't hold any community workshops, so we're trying to have to navigate that and work our way around that, which is fine. We've got to do that. And then the other thing is, I think Fiona touched on it as well, is that surety of income. If you're trying to secure debt funding, you do actually need to demonstrate that you've got some income, so you've got a cash flow. So that sort of helps people understand that this is feasible and will work. Our plan is to put in place a minimum viable product, or a pilot plant. And that's really about kicking the tires, testing our assumptions to make sure what we've written down on a piece of paper or in a financial model actually stacks up. So that's one of our key objectives. We're looking for new partners to get on board. We're looking for like-minded investors who want to do something different that can be a game changer for agriculture in Australia. It's pretty proven technology overseas. Our sort of current system, as I think we've talked about, is pretty challenging, but I suppose we're trying to play outside that system. So we're looking for people who sort of have a passion for what we're trying to do. We're looking at sort of engine solutions and how do we actually store the end product as well. Our aim, as Fiona said, this might be a bit of a pipe dream, is to provide an Australian solution. That's possibly a pipe dream, but that's a goal, and that's a goal that we're trying to achieve. And our aim is really to be up and running by sort of November 2022, which is the start of the irrigation season. And on a final note, really happy to help. It's a really complicated thing to go through renewable energy. We've learned a lot. We made a lot of mistakes, but we've learned a lot of good stuff along the way. So happy to share if that helps people. And that's my contact details. That's it.
All good. Any questions that spring to mind?
There's no questions come through, but Joe has got some prepared on Slido. So let me just share my screen and I'll pull those up.
Okay. Thanks, Joe. That was good.
Screen?
That's,
It is.
find the Slido thing.
I haven't. Hang on.
Because just, in discussion while we're doing that, Joe, I found it interesting, as I mentioned before, that that the biodigester came up as your option because there was, we've looked at a whole pile of things, and oftentimes, like you say, the CapEx expense scares the willies out of you as far as it goes. But I guess once you incorporate the fertiliser side of it, that seems to be the important sort of thing from your point of view.
Yeah, it's just building on that point. Anaerobic digestion is quite a cool technology when you get to understand it in terms of what it can do and what the other things it can do. And that's something we sort of learned quite quickly, is it can do a lot more than just fuel and fertilizer. For example, it can produce CO2, gas and things like that. So yeah, you've got You have to look at it in a more complex way, I think, is what we found.
Yeah.
There we go, everyone. I've got it working. Would you buy renewable natural gas, methane, to replace diesel if you could? Well, we've got a windfall there. So for those people that answered yes, if yes, would you be willing to reasonably pay 10% more, the same as diesel, 10% less, or 20% less?
Mhm.
Interesting. And just another one. Would you buy AD produced fertilizer if it was equal in quality to products available in the marketplace?
Anaerobic digestion, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm not too familiar with all the acronyms. Okay, and for those of you who answered yes to that one, would you willing to be reasonably paying 10% more, the same as fertilizer, 10% less, 20% less?
Oh, wow.
And just the last question that I have for you all. Would you invest in a locally owned AD plant to produce RNG or fertilizer if it was available in your area, assuming that your combined annual cost of diesel and fertilizer is 15 to 20% of your production costs? Did you have any comments on those responses, Joe?
Thank you, everybody, for responding. They're actually really interesting. So the 9% that agreed for the over 100,000, can you give us a call? That'd be great. Only joking. No, they're actually, the reason why we asked those questions was just to really gauge the understanding of what people will be willing to pay. And those questions are sort of, we're trying to use for attracting in other investors. So it's just a sort of agile way of getting feedback. That's all we're trying to do. So thank you, everybody, for doing that, which is great.
Good on you, Joe. Thank you for that. And I hope it all goes well. Keep in touch, and we'll be keeping in touch with you, because I think that's, yeah, there's lots of interesting things going on there. And I think, again, Ben's sort of supply of engines might be an interesting thing to sort of talk about as well. So, all right.